Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We have quite a big group joining us today, so we're just waiting as everyone the attendees start trickling in. Thank you again for joining us in this event on Portugal Golden Visa. Portugal Golden Visa is the gateway for Europe, or is known as the gateway for Europe, and it's actually one of the world's most popular residency programs. And actually, even during this time, it has been popular, and perhaps more popular actually during this time, as we recognize the need for alternative residencies and also alternative opportunities for us and our future generations. So we'll wait another around 2 minutes for everyone to join in, and then we will delve straight into the webinar. We have some interesting speakers today, and also lots of interesting topics actually, and interesting questions which we will cover at the end. So at the end of the webinar, we will be covering your questions. There is a Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. If you'd like to click that, we will address your questions at the end, and we certainly will also provide our details at the end for you to contact us, particularly if your questions are more consultative. We will be offering as well a free consultation with our lawyer, FCO Legal, at the end of the webinar as well. So thank you again very much for joining us today. Just a little bit of a brief on the flow that will happen today. We will introduce the Portugal Golden Visa, and then we'll delve into some of the legalities and the criteria for the Golden Visa. And then we'll talk about Portugal and its exciting economy. And then we will go into some of the investment options for the Portugal Golden Visa as well. And then we will close with a Q&A. So I'd like to come and introduce the team. We've been working together as a team for several years now, and I'd like to say that we have almost 80 cases now. We have 100% success rate with the processing of the Portugal Golden Visa. And the great thing of this, the team with Global Migration Services fronting the Golden Visa application, and then working with the legal team, FCO Legal, and then also with Jamie, who has a Golden Visa herself, giving consultation to clients, and then on our side, with international property settlements, the property side, we intend, and we've built this structure to take you throughout the choices of embarking on the program. And then after that, the whole 5 years of helping you monitor your investments, and also going through with you with the renewals, and also the choices of permanent residency and citizenship at the end of the program, and then beyond that. So Desmond, if you click to the next screen, I'd just like to go in and introduce everyone. So the screen before that, the first speaker today will be Desmond Ang, and he is actually an award-winning migration agent and migration agency, and he has been in this business for 16 years. He's a chartered accountant, and has been awarded top 25 global migration agency, making us very proud, making Malaysia very proud as well, bringing the Malaysian migration scene and agency scene to the forefront, even comparing with top migration agencies in China and in Shanghai. So, and also the next speaker after that is Antonio Vignal Jr. And Antonio with FCO Legal has operations in Spain and Italy, and also in Portugal. So they cover quite a lot of Europe. They are migration lawyers as well, but Antonio is also a tax lawyer, and also they do a lot of trade agreements and can bring clients throughout the migration process, but also tax advisory. And if you intend on expanding your business operations to Spain Italy or Portugal, AFCO Legal can also assist. And so he has had legal and immigration advisory for 20 years, senior partner of AFCO Legal, and he has he's part of the bar to provide arbitration in also Spain and Portugal as well. The next slide. Myself, I'm a director of international property settlement. We've been in the business of promoting Australian property for the past almost 12 years now. And we embarked on the Portugal Golden Visa program around 4 years ago together with the team. And since then, we've actually met many clients and actually it's been very fulfilling to recommend properties and investments for the Portugal Golden Visa program and also general investments actually. And as Jamie will cover later, Portugal is actually a very exciting scene at the moment for investment, whether for the Portugal Golden Visa or in fact general investment. So then after Desmond, Jamie will come, after Desmond and Antonio, Jamie will come on and speak about her experience regarding the Portugal Golden Visa and also investments in Portugal. Jamie represents AFCO Legal and also represents the property side in the consultancy of the program and also in the consultancy of properties. So I'll hand over the baton firstly to Desmond, who will be introducing the program.
Hi, Judith, thanks. Hi, everyone. Nice meeting you. My name is Desmond Ang. I would like to welcome every one of you and thank you for joining us today. We are here to make sure that every one of you get the full detailed information and to assure that, by the end of the session, every one of you have a very well understanding about these programs. I'm very excited today to share with you about these programs before the changes coming up next January, because this is an opportunity for every one of you to get to know these programs really, really well. Just to start off with this session, I'd like to give a quick introduction about Global Migration Solution. So this is a company that was being set up in year 2004. So we have been in this industry over the last 16 years, committed to produce and to support all our clients to achieve their dreams in terms of getting the residency across these 5 jurisdictions. So obviously, Australia and New Zealand has always been popular, and Portugal, the reason why, we take on these programs because we honestly believe, and over the years, it has proven that, these countries is the best entry point for you and your family member to the European citizenship. And of course, we also deliver and support our clients for USA and Canada as well. Just very quickly, these programs was introduced in 2012. So the objective of these programs is for the Portuguese government to offer the residency with an options for EU citizenship to the non-EU citizens. So this is an important program for Portugal, and it has over the years, it has become the most popular one as compared to all other golden visa in the region. Yeah, and I would like to share with you why. Now, especially for those who is hearing these programs for the very first time, I would like to give you some pointer and helps you with how to understand and how to get to know these programs well. Number one, this is one investment and allowing you and your family member to be able to access to 27 countries, at the later stage. How does that work is, you're going to start off with a 5 years golden visa resident status, and with an options for you and your family member to obtain a citizenship. Now, with the citizenship, you can later on choose to live, work, and study at anywhere of the 27 countries that I'll be sharing with you shortly. Okay. Now, number two, one of the very important factor that my clients has always asked me is, how much time do I need to spend living in the country, right? Whether it is for Portugal, it is for Australia, it is for United States and Canada. Now, if you are looking at an alternative and a backup plan, this Portugal Golden Visa perhaps is probably one of the programs that require a very minimum residency. So if you're asking how much time do you need to spend, you are required to spend only 14 days in 2 years' time. So that is really, really minimum. And if you are looking at keeping, your residency across a few different countries, and these programs doesn't require you to spend too much of time, which allows you to continue, with your business, with your commitment in your home country, right? I do have many clients who has obtained more than one residency. For example, a couple of my clients who has already been, a Australia PR for long times, move on to also take up this Portugal residency, just because this program has a very minimum number of days required for you to spend over there. Now, real estate investment, why is it that, this program again is very popular? Because it does allow you to buy into a completed unit or real estate investment. Many programs out there, especially like, for example, Australia, United States, the migration program doesn't allow you to acquire, a completed property for your own use. Whereas this Portugal Golden Visa allows you to do that. But later on, we'll move on to also cover, other than the real estate, what other options available. Okay, no dodgy donation scheme. I need to highlight that, because you might come across some of the programs, whereby require you to make a contribution, for the country, where you don't get, anything back in returns other than the residency status. Okay, so these programs again, allows you to include not only your spouse and the children's, but do take notes, it allows you to also include your dependent parents and parents-in-law. So think about it, one investment that covers 3 generations, should you choose to do that. Again, there's a lot of flexibility about these programs. You're not required to make a decision or decide who to be included in these programs. You have plenty of times to decide gradually over the years who you want to be included. Yeah, this is another, beautiful aspect about these programs. And last but not the least, no health requirement. I wanted to emphasize that because Portuguese government respect all migrants with any forms of the health backgrounds, whether it's for yourself with some medical condition, or for those gifted children where they are being rejected or not being accepted in most of the country. And here, this countries is opening for you and your family member to come over. Now, what does it, what are you entitled being a Portugal Golden Visa holder? Basically, this visa, upon approval, you and your family member do give rights to live, work, and study. Other than that, your children do have the access to free education in the public school. Yeah. And you have the access to, importantly, you and your family member do also have the access to the free healthcare. And I think during the pandemic, especially, I'm sure Antonio later on will share with you. And again, this country has shown the world that, this is the best managed country during this pandemic. Yeah. And the freedom of movement in the Schengen area, especially if you're coming from the country where, your passport do require you to apply for the visa. And with this golden visa, you and your family member do have all the freedom to be able to move freely in the region. Yeah. And importantly, and it is always, important for us to emphasize and remind, all of you a few times, citizenship is an option. And me personally like about this Portugal Golden Visa, because the requirements and the criteria to get the citizenship is so flexible. Okay. And again, it is a very smart programs. The governments basically, has this tax advantage for a migrants, like, those from GV holder or from European, who move from one country, from different country to Portugal. The 10 years of non-habitual residency programs has also invited not just migrants from Asia, but, migrants within the Europe itself. Okay, so these are all the fundamental and important reasons why, it does support the whole programs and support the whole entire economy, system, ecosystem. And it also supported, the various investment mechanism that makes these whole programs and the demand, strong. Now, we talk about the first 5 years and what happens after the first 5 years. If you recall, I did mention that you and your family member do have an options to consider to apply for the citizenship of Portugal. And right after you have gained the citizenship, look at the options available. So if your children wish to study medicines, the island is there available for them. If they would like to study music, there are countries that is so popular and famous with the music. Engineering, Germany is there. So it does, often the time when I share about these programs with my clients who has already they obtained the PR, in Australia, and they felt like, oh, this is just a much better, a bigger pie for them to choose. And sometimes, the children might end up, some wanting to go to Australia, some wanting to go to Canada or USA. And, these programs fit in really, really well for them to be able to, get their children across. Now, so with that, look at that, so live and work freely, that is really, really amazing, in 27 countries. So basically, from what you have looked at, the entitlement for you and your family member for the first 5 years, this is an enlarged, entitlement after the 5 years. Okay, imagine, they can study anywhere, any of the school in the 27 country, free healthcare from 27 country, free movement, and, with your rights to, if you are very passionate, with the political scene, you do have the rights to even extend it to have the vote. Yeah, so that is my sharing. And one last sharing. Now, this is a very common question, and I pull out this slide because most of the times clients do come across and ask me, how do I choose, Desmond, between Portugal, Spain, Greece, or some other golden visa? Now, if you look at the jurisdiction that I'm representing, Portugal is the one. So no doubt, the Portugal carry a lot of the advantages, compared to all others programs. Just a quick overview. If you look at the investment amount is alone, Portugal do have a range of 280,000 to 500,000. There are various options for you to choose. Spain starts from 500,000, Greece starts from 250,000, which is not much, lesser compared to Portugal. But when it comes to the residency, right, Spain and Greece may seems to have a flexibility without any minimum residency there. But should you do consider later on, to move on to become a PR or citizenship, look at the number of days that you and your family members need to fulfill. So that could be a challenge at the later stage. Whereas for Portugal, you are spending only 14 days for first 2 years, another 14 days for on the third and the fourth year, plus another 7 days on the fifth year, right? So that is only, the only residency required for you or your family members to fulfill. So in fact, the way I look at it, it is not even, a mandatory residency. It is more of a visit, a holiday for you and your family members. All right. Now, in terms of the investment options, of course, there are various options from real estates to funds to capital to jobs. And the fastest options for you to gain the citizenship is really Portugal. So basically on the 6 years, you can consider choosing that. If you do not wish to, you could actually take up the citizenship at any point of time. But if you want to do it on the 6 years, right? Spain on the year 11, Greece on the year 7, and effectively you can't do that unless you need to show that you're a usual resident in Greece and pay taxes. All right. So I hope that this gives you a good direction and summary. And I'm going to pass over to you, Antonio, to describe, and to elaborate more about these programs. Okay. Antonio, over to you, please.
Thank you very much, Desmond. Good afternoon, anyone. My name is Antonio, and I will be describing some of the most important features of the Portuguese Golden Visa program and how they can be a benefit to you and your family. So, straight off the bat, this is a residency by investment program. A main applicant / investor will need to be of legal age. We can also, as we shall see later, regroup or unify up to 3 generations. We, of course, must be able to produce a clean criminal record. Again, health clearance is not required. You must transfer your minimum required investment into Portugal. Any of the options that we will take a look at. Visit Portugal an average of 7 days a year, where you can bundle the whole required minimum stay period in one go in every 2-year period, and then of course maintain your investment for those 5 years. In terms of the application process and the flow of the same, we would kick things off with an initial consultation to understand what the demands, what the requirements are for each particular case. Then, of course, it's up to the document collection, drafting of powers of attorney. Then we would progress with the obtaining of the tax number. Tax number is mandatory as a non-tax resident in Portugal. And this is to open the bank account. This is to purchase real estate. So a tax number is always important. And then bank account, again, a very central part of the whole application, because we need to prove that the money has been transferred into Portugal, and the bank will issue a statement with that information later on. Then, of course, once the transfer of funds has happened and the relevant investment has to be selected, if it's real estate, then property purchase will take place. And once we have the investment which has been performed, we are well on our way to file your Golden Visa application. Golden Visa application actually consists of 2 phases, 2 parts. Number 1 is online. You do not need to travel. We submit part of the documents. Phase number 2, we resubmit the same documents. And that's when you do need to come over and have your biometrics taken. Okay, as you can see now on the screen, step number 7, you come to Portugal, get your biometrics taken, full resubmission of the file, and then we would wait until we are notified of the approval. Then the card would be released. Over the whole program, you would get your initial card plus 2 renewals. So we have to go through the process 2 more times. In each 2-year period, you would spend 14 days, or after year 5, if you spend your 7 days, then you would be eligible to move on to either permanent residency or citizenship, if you should wish to go that way. So again, brief summary, the program itself, 5-year program, where you need to keep your investment during that time and spend an average of 7 days a year, or 14 days in one go in every 2-year period. Then after the 5 years, you can choose between permanent residency or citizenship. The difference is, as a permanent resident, you have basically the same rights and obligations as a Golden Visa holder in terms of stay, etc. With citizenship, it's another level. Now, as I mentioned just a few minutes ago, you will be getting your initial card plus 2 renewals. Now, for each card, there's a processing fee of €533, and the initial permit is €5,300. In the second, there's a small typo in the second and third card. The cost of the card is half. So the processing fee will be the same, €533, but the cost of the card is 2,600. So the total, as you can see on the screen, is correct. The total over the 5 years, total combined over the 5 years per person is €12,275. Now, let's take a look at what investment options are available to us. Now, as Desmond mentioned, yes, real estate is the most popular one by far. And there are several different sub-options within this possibility, and starting as high as 500,000 euro, so one or more pieces of real estate anywhere in Portugal, and this is 500,000. If you choose a low density area, what low density of population that is, then the threshold would fall by 20% to 400,000 euro. Then you also have the possibility to take an older property and refurbish it. So the combined cost of the property price and the refurbishment price needs to reach 350,000 euro. Okay. Once again, should you choose this pathway in an area of low density of population, you get that 20% discount, and therefore your minimum investment amount is 280,000 euro. A few other options, venture capital funds, 350,000 euro minimum as of today. Bank deposit in Portugal, 1 million euro. Or if you are of the entrepreneur type, then if you have a business for Portugal and you create at least 10 permanent jobs and keep that business over 5 years, as with all of the other investment options, then you are also entitled to apply. Now, I think it is very important, especially as we near the end of 2021, to discuss some of the program changes that will be implemented as of January 1st. Okay, and especially regarding real estate. As you can see, main areas, the main cities, Lisbon, Porto, etc., which we will find mainly on the coast, will be excluded. Not all real estate, but residential real estate is excluded. So you can still buy any form of retail, office space, any kind of commercial real estate within that area still after 2022. Again, residential, no. Residential will be restricted to the interior areas of Portugal and the islands of Madeira and Azores. In terms of fund investments, the minimum will be raised from 350 to 500,000. And finally, the capital transfer route, again, there will be a raise from 1 million to 1.5 million. Okay, so if you're thinking about taking the advantage of the current rules, my advice is we need to move fast. Do not delay, because we need to get our foot in the door before the end of the year. Moving on, in terms of property investment, again, being the most popular choice for most applicants, and I would say this might be 80–85% of all applicants. There are some taxes to consider. Some of them will be one-off, and we look at transfer tax and stamp duty. Usually we'd be looking at something between a combined of 7 to 8%, okay, both taxes. But transfer tax is on a sliding scale and depends on the value of the property. And then we would have recurring or annual taxes to pay, especially council tax. Council tax is based not on the property's market value or purchase price, but on its taxable value as assessed by the tax authorities. And naturally, this is a much, much lower figure than that of the purchase price. And so the rate will vary depending on the council the property is located. Now, the Golden Visa Program and purchase of property, etc. It's a residency by investment, and therefore with investment, you can actually make an income on it. So if you choose real estate, then the most obvious thing to do, not mandatory, but a lot of people do it, is to lease the property. And depending on whether it's long-term or short-term lease, then the tax rate might be a little higher, a little lower. So long-term lease, that's 28%. Short-term lease, Airbnb style, if you will, starts at 8.75%, might be 12.5%, depending on the areas that the property is located in. I would also like to mention that when you're buying this real estate in Portugal, it is freehold. It is yours to keep in perpetuity. You can pass it on to your descendants. You can lease it. You can sell it off later after your 5 years to anyone, foreign or national. So it's an added bonus, I would say, in comparison to some other programs that do have restrictions. And finally, in terms of other taxes, it's important to stress that Portugal has no wealth tax. There's no gift and inheritance tax. And as we've seen, a very low short-term rental tax rate, which might be 8.75 or 12.5%, once again, depending on where the property is located in. So to sum it up, it's an excellent proposition. You get real estate, you can make money on your real estate, low tax jurisdiction, as we have seen, and at the same time, you get permanent, temporary, leading up to permanent residency and citizenship. So again, one excellent proposition from Portugal. That will be all from me right now. Thank you very much, and I will now pass the baton back to Judith. Thank you very much.
The next part of the webinar will be presented by Jamie, who will describe some of the reasons why she decided to embark on this program and about the economy of Portugal.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for your time. And the Golden Visa Program is actually an excellent program. I think I'm probably one of the first Malaysians to actually embark on the program. And I would say it's definitely one of the best decisions I've made. About a few years ago, basically, when the idea actually came along, I haven't even been to Portugal, and my husband and I were originally looking to invest into Spain. But after having been to Spain and also visiting some of our Malaysian friends who are living in Portugal, I found the place very, very pleasant. And I think the country itself is also very pro-investors, which I think it's very important when you are investing in a foreign country. And the next video that you will see here will basically summarize a little bit about the growth potential about the country, which I'll share a little bit more with you. And then after that, I'll also share a little bit more with you why I actually made that decision to actually pursue the Golden Visa in Portugal.
In an increasingly globalized world, how does a country stand out? This is a country made of land and sea, a crossroad between the Mediterranean and the Atlantic, a link between cultures and continents. This is the homeland of talented people, a founding member of the Euro, a gateway to a market of 500 million people. This is the home of a world leader in fast and ultra-fast chargers for electric vehicles. A country that produces more than half of its energy out of renewable sources. A privileged partner for innovation. Every day, more and more companies come to work and think with us. We also produce cars, but above all, we think cars. Think the green road ahead of us. And think the future. innovation is taking the country to new frontiers. This is the world's biggest cork producer, transforming cork for the most traditional and revolutionary uses. From the top of the most precious wine bottles in the world to thermal shields and rockets and spaceships destined for space. This is a leading tourist destination in the world. A competitive and sustainable location. A top country in providing technological services. Host of great international events integrated in some of the most important value chains in the world that attracts and keeps some of the most talented people. So how does a country stand out in an increasingly globalized world? Well, I guess it's by welcoming the world and bridging cultures. Portugal, talented and welcoming.
So in my search of a wonderful residency program that I'll embark on, I have to say one of the main criteria that was important for us was to search for something that was very stable and peaceful and safe. I think that was probably one of the major criteria, because I think in this current climate currently in the world, where people are facing a lot of issues like riots and so on, I think it was really comforting to know that Portugal is actually the third most peaceful country after Iceland and New Zealand. The other thing as well that I have to say, that when I actually spent significant time there and understanding the people there, what you saw in the previous video was also what they said. They mentioned a lot about bridging cultures. I think other than Malaysia, I'm sure a lot of you will agree that actually Malaysia is a very multicultural country itself, and that's what we love about our country. But I have to say that when I was in Portugal, I saw this as well with my very own eyes. I saw many different cultures and races all together, and there was basically no racism in the picture. And I felt that this is actually quite an important criteria, especially if one wanted to relocate or one wanted to even invest in that perspective. I think I saw that the country actually had a lot of potential because of that particular reason. And because of that, also Forbes actually listed Portugal as one of the best places also for residency and also a second passport. Mainly also because the fact that alongside that it's also the most peaceful, third most peaceful country. It also ranks very well in terms of the healthcare. It is actually ranked 12th in the world, surprisingly even better than UK and Australia. And what I really what I love about Portugal is the fact that they do not actually differentiate between your status of your residency in order for you to access the healthcare. As a temporary resident, I can already access the healthcare and access the free healthcare in Portugal anytime that I would like to. And that's actually a major advantage because we don't have to wait until the 5 years before we choose to do PR or citizenship in order for us to get specific treatments and to access the healthcare. So that is actually a very important benefit in pursuing Portugal. The other thing is, if one were to also consider looking at citizenship, I have to say that it's probably one of the most clear-cut citizenship route programs. And what I like about the program, that it is non-binding. At any point in time, if let's say if you wanted to not discontinue the program, you can also do that and just don't renew the renewals that Antonio was mentioning about. Or you can also choose to look at PR before you actually look at citizenship. But if you actually decide to embark on citizenship, the wonderful thing is by being a citizen of Portugal, that also means that you're actually a citizen of the EU, which will then allow you to also hold the 5th most powerful passport, and will allow you to not only live, work, and study in any of the 27 countries. It will also allow you to access some other countries like the US and Canada without having to go through the interviews and the visa applications and so on. So that itself also makes it actually very useful and definitely beneficial for one to consider citizenship. The other thing that I have to say that also makes Portugal very different and nice is also the fact that it has a relatively low cost of living. And the minimum wage itself only starts at about 600 euros, which actually then allows a lot of actually businesses to actually open. Hence, you can also see that Portugal has been hailed to be the next technology and Silicon Valley of Europe. Many brands such as Google and Amazon have actually opened their subsidiaries itself in Portugal because of this particular minimum wage. And also there is very low barriers of entry in that sense. And it's actually very easy to set up a business. The other thing in terms of cost of living also, it's one of the lowest cost of living, I would say, in Europe. And it's even much lower than a lot of our other countries in Asia. And I really like the fact that we don't have to pay too much money basically for food, and one can actually retire there if we wanted to look at that as an option as well. The other thing is also in terms of tourism, what I really like about Portugal is the fact that it's attracted a lot of foreign tourism. And even though during this pandemic period, I have actually invested into a property in Lisbon, I have to say that although yes, in the initial first few months of the pandemic, of course, in terms of our rental yields, we are a little bit affected. But I would say for the past year itself, it's stabilized. And I'm actually really surprised that we are still able to get up to 80% of the occupancy during the pandemic period. Which actually makes it very comforting and to know that we are still getting very good rental yields during this pandemic. And also, I think because when we're investing into Portugal, your property is also rented out, especially when you're doing touristic activities. You're not only renting it out to local Portuguese tourists, you're also renting out to the other 27 countries. So that's the beauty of Europe as well. You're not investing into Portugal, and you're opening up yourself basically to access the European market as well. So I find that actually very fulfilling in that sense. The other thing in terms of education, I think a lot of us also, at some point in our life also, we have to think about our children and where they can actually get good education without overpaying for education. I've been getting a lot of friends of mommy friends from school have been complaining how expensive international school fees are in Malaysia, and how they actually and in terms of even training programs, they probably have to budget something like 200,000 ringgit in order for them to go through a university degree. What I'm really glad to share with you today is that even if you choose, let's say, not to get an citizenship to get your free education in Europe, you can also consider doing the Portuguese education system, which is actually ranked very well. And you only need to spend an average about 6,000 euros a year. And quite a fair bit of the degrees are actually offered in English, including medical and medical studies. One can actually be a graduate in Portugal as a doctor by just spending merely about 6,000 euros a year. So I think that itself would, especially for those who would really want to allow their children to pursue the areas of medicine and allow them to continue to work after they graduate as well as a doctor, I think having that option available is definitely a very good gateway for our children. The other thing that I like about the education system in Portugal as well is that the fact that they are part of an Erasmus program. The Erasmus program basically is a program that they tie up with all the European Union countries. And what they do is basically they do an exchange. So it's very similar to what we have in Malaysia, whereby we have training programs. So you do a 2+1 or 1+2. But in their case, basically, you can have an option of 2+1 for a single degree or 2+2 for a double degree. And the international exchange that they do is not limited to only doing the final year in any of the European countries. They even have the final year options in Australia or the US or even Canada, as you can see in the graph that's in the presentation. And you only need to pay the local Portuguese fees of 6,000 euros. So this was actually very a pleasant discovery actually, because I'm seriously now planning to enroll my daughter already. We have reached that level that we need to make a decision what we need to do with her future education. And also happy to find out that we can even look at the double degree option with the University of San Diego, whereby we will do 2 years in Portugal and 2 years in the US. But instead of paying the normal 50,000 USD fees per year, we will only pay 6,000 euros per year in order for her to pursue a double degree in Portugal and in San Diego University. So this itself then made it very, very attractive and definitely worthwhile considering, especially since we know for a fact that the property will appreciate and still give you rental yields over the years. I would highly recommend that one would consider looking at this residency by investment program. The other thing is, I've mentioned earlier also that I think one of the major things that we need to also look into investing in the country is also in terms of their growth in foreign investment. Now, what's really amazing is the fact that Portugal has attracted a lot of foreign investments, especially from China. They've gotten the Three Gorges, basically. The company has invested basically in EDP, which is their TNB equivalent, the Naga Nacional. And this is actually just the very start in the last few years of some of the foreign investments, and which also included Huawei and so on. So they actually have a huge growth in foreign investment, which I felt was also very important in determining the future of the country. The other thing I think a lot of clients also normally ask is the fact that in terms of the language, I think what's also important and has attracted all these foreign investors as well is the fact that Portugal also speaks a lot of English. In fact, in the statistics, it's shown that actually they speak as much English as Malaysians do. So that actually has become very, very encouraging as well for one to consider Portugal. The other thing is, in addition to the rental yields that has been stable despite the pandemic situation, I have to say capital appreciation has been very stable, and I'm actually very happy to know that year on year my property has still increased despite the current pandemic situation, and I think that gives us even more reasons why Portugal is still hailed as one of the top countries to invest in Europe. And this is something definitely one must consider, because I think by having a strong investment, a strong rental yield, I think that's actually very important. And for most Malaysians, in that perspective, I think that's what we normally look at. We always ensure that we want to have a good investment. And in addition to that, the residency then comes in as a bonus. The next thing I'm going to share is actually about the real estate investment options. But I think I will pass it over to Judith, my partner, basically to elaborate a little bit more about some of the options that we have explored actually for our clients. There are basically many options available, but we've broken it down and summarized it for you for your understanding. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jamie. If you don't mind clicking to the next slide for me. Okay. So thank you again for joining. We note that you have many questions, and we will try and attempt that at the end of the webinar, but we're a little bit mindful of time. So if we don't get to cover your questions in this webinar, we certainly will be contacting you to offer you a private consultation and also address your questions one-on-one. Some of your questions are also consultative. Questions like reunification depends on ages of your kids and also your dependent parents, and so we will be also able to address those questions on a one-on-one basis. We will be putting up our contact details at the end of this webinar, and I believe you've also been contacted by some of our colleagues. So do keep in touch with us after this webinar. So these are some of the investment options. Basically, the Portugal Golden Visa is a very simple program. There's mainly 3 criteria. The first criteria is that one makes a qualified investment. The second one is just the stay of in 5 years, 14 days every 2 years. So essentially, as Desmond said, it's a holiday at every 2 years. And the third criteria is clear police checks. So in terms of the investment options, these are some of the investment options, and they're going to change at the end of the year. So if you're keen, then as Antonio mentioned earlier, it is quite essential at this moment to look into these investment options and the Portugal Golden Visa at the moment quite seriously. So in terms of real estate, one can invest in residential, commercial. There's also hotel investments, and we're going to show you some options at the later part of this webinar. If you invest in anything, it's generally 500,000, and in the main cities and the coastal areas. If it's in the less dense population areas, then it's 400,000 euros. And if the property is for renovation and rehabilitation in certain areas and hasn't been renovated for 30 years, so obviously, part of the reason of the Golden Visa is also to renew the cities and make it prettier and suitable for modern living. Then that criteria in the main cities would drop to 350,000 minimum investment, and in the less dense or less populated areas, 280,000. So we'll also be showing you some of these options shortly. And at the end of the year, it will change. So residential properties in Lisbon, Porto, and the main coastal cities will no longer qualify for the Portugal Golden Visa. So if you intend to invest in the equivalent cities in Malaysia, such as Kuala Lumpur and Penang, and also the main cities in Malaysia, then this is the time to make the decision. So, and in terms of funds, we're also going to show you a few funds that and go through that with you, and we can go through that with you. The minimum investment is 350,000. And at the end of the year, the minimum investment will increase to 500,000. So we can also take you through the process. We have done a due diligence on the funds, and also depending on your intended investment, we can also take you through that process. If you intend to set up a company, you need to provide 10 jobs, and this will still qualify. And in terms of if you intend to invest funds like 1 million euros, it will also change, as Desmond mentioned earlier, to 1.5 million euros. We will be able to cover that, but that is, we were asked earlier about the interest rate. Interest rate tends to be rather low in government bonds, but we can also take you through that process. The next slide, please. Okay, so I wanted to cover a little bit about funds first, because we often get asked this as an alternative investment to property. And we actually have done our research on most of the funds that are available. There are some 30 funds available. So do contact us. We've actually gone through the different funds in terms of what they invest in, their strategy and diversification, the fees that they charge, the exit strategies. Some come with a guaranteed buyback, and some don't, and also the strength of the fund managers. So these are some of the funds. It is in a different presentation, and we don't have enough time to cover these particular slides, but do contact us and we can also take you through the fund options. Next slide. Okay, however, 95% of people who invest in Portugal for the purposes of the Golden Visa tend to invest in property, and many of us invest in 500,000 property or 350,000 property. Only some 3 to 4% invest in venture capital, or actually transfer capital of 1 million. So thus in this presentation, we will cover a little bit more on property. And it is consultative which property you'd like to choose. We generally would bring you through certain criteria. Things like valuations are important to us. And at this time, we just wanted to say that when we we pick a property, or when we pick a property with you, we would like to pick one which would have in its contracts some sort of security for the golden visa, because obviously when when we get the approvals, it would be towards the end of the year, and we don't really want to be caught in a situation where the property is not qualified for the golden visa. So rest assured, we've done these pieces of due diligence for you already, and many of our due diligence has to also do with general valuations around the areas, particularly in Lisbon, where information is very readily available. So we would also be able to refer back to those and ensure that these locations are not overpriced, or particularly for the golden visa, or these are also prices that local Portuguese would be required to pay for the properties. So these are some of the consultations that we have done. As a team, we will be assisting you for the initial consultation on what you may like to invest. And we also would like to take you throughout the 5 years. Obviously, EFCO will be your tax representation, and so we'll also take you through taxation regarding your rental return, whether you choose long-term, which is the normal leases like 1+1 year leases, or short-term, which is Airbnb. And Airbnb actually is offering returns, which is a high and higher than average, and of course also has an incentive of lower lower taxation at the moment. So there are benefits to do Airbnb. There are some zones which allow Airbnb and some zones which don't allow Airbnb, certain restriction zones. So we will also be able to cover those situations with you on a consultative basis. Next slide. A lot of our decisions on where to choose a property is also based on the metro system. So much like cities where there is a good metro system, such as London, we would generally pick zone 1 areas for investment, because these investments still make a lot of sense. So we're just going to go through some examples of property, and as we said, we will be contacting you on the next part of sort of our relationship with you in this webinar, and then after that in consultation, so we can actually show you these properties closely. The first property we're going to pick is Orikdor, and Orikdor is one of our favorite properties because it is Airbnb eligible, and it is in an area which is near Avenida Liberdade, 20 minutes walk from Avenida Liberdade, and it is an area where it's just opposite their largest shopping center, which is 5 minutes walk from their Amoreiras, and in between that is actually the embassy area, and also the area where a lot of the hotels and all that are located. It's close enough to a lot of the parts of the city, and we find it a very convenient location for both long-term tenancy, short-term tenancy, and also an investment returns. So Grasa is also an area where a lot of we find a lot of potential. Grasa is an area which is being regentrified really quickly and really nicely, and so we find that these areas are ripe for capital appreciation, and we have 2 properties in Grasa to choose from, one of which, this one, Veronica, has a very nice view, and actually it's near where the National Church is, and also it's near where the ships arrive. So it is actually a very nice nice location. So we also have properties more in the commercial area. So for example, this one, Patio do Barão, this one is in Alameda. It is near Arriero and also near Saldanha, and so more in the commercial location as well. We also have some commercial properties in some of these areas, which are also quite interesting to look at. So this property property is under the 500,000 scheme. And if you want something complete, this one in Príncipe Real, we get asked about Príncipe Real a lot because Príncipe Real is one of the coolest neighborhoods to live in the world. And so it is really quite a great location to have a property. And it's very near the city, very near the parks, the famous parks, the botanical park. And this is also one, this property is complete, thus is under the 500,000 scheme. We also have properties really near where you see the bridge behind me, which is called the April the 25th Bridge. So Lisbon, basically, the city spans from Avenida Liberdade, where you see Gucci, Louis Vuitton area. And if you walk around half an hour from there, you will get to this bridge, and it's the most famous bridge. And basically, the city expands around a radius of that area. So wherever Avenida Liberdade is, half an hour walk towards the west, north, and the east. That is actually the area where it's still considered city center, and some of these properties have really great views. This one is under the 500,000 scheme. It's a riverfront, and it's very near the LX factory, which is the new entertainment area of Lisbon. This property is Arriero Select, and it is a great place if you intend to live in Lisbon or spend substantial time there. It is a local residential area. And this property we really like because it's also a part of history. It is the original gateway. The building is the original gateway into Lisbon. And these apartments are being rejuvenated and regenerated. They call it rehabilitation, keeping the facade. Most of these properties, particularly under the 350,000 scheme, we keep the developer has to respect the original facade, they call it, and the inside is basically rejuvenated. It's actually gutted out, and they put in new insulation, new plumbing, new electricity, even new foundations for modern living. And this one is one of those, and this is almost complete, though it's under the 500,000 scheme. So it's a great place to live. It's near a local area where and very central area as well. And this one is a commercial property in Santa Barbara. This one was the one we were referring to. This is one of the only commercial properties which ticks off the guarantees that we would require as we promote the properties that we are comfortable with and have done due diligence with. This is under the 350,000 eligible scheme. It's commercial. It also has a guaranteed returns. So in terms of returns, some of the properties have a guaranteed return and some don't come with a guaranteed return, and then we will assist you with the Airbnb provision and what to do next with the property, basically. If you prefer a house, this one in Pamela Village, which is a golf resort, is also very nice. Most houses, I would say 90% of the houses are under the 500,000 scheme because obviously they are generally new houses. This one is in a villa in a golf neighborhood, 36 minutes from the CBD and really near international schools. Under the 280,000 scheme, we also have a few options. One is in Alcácer do Sal, which is only 1 hour drive out of Lisbon, and it is the entryway into the beach and also the entryway into the Alentejo region, which is the agricultural region and the closest agricultural region to Lisbon. So this one also has a lot of potential. It also comes with a rental guarantee, and it is both a holiday destination, but also a town where there's a thriving economy of agriculture and also towards the beach, going towards the beach. We also like to focus on this town called Évora, which is the capital of the Alentejo region, again, because it is also an agricultural economy generated area. Évora also has a university, and it's one of Portugal's largest universities. This is also under the 280,000 scheme, and it is actually the midway between Lisbon and Spain. And we see a lot of potential in this area because of the future transportation around the area as well. We also have some in Algarve. These are some in Algarve that we have. We get asked about Algarve a lot, being the south of Lisbon. So these are some hotel investments in Algarve. We actually have 3. They are all hotels. And so hotels often come with a guaranteed buyback and also a guaranteed return, some of them as high as 7%. And some of these are under the 280,000 scheme, and some of these are under the 350,000 scheme. So we can also take you through those. Again, under the 280,000 scheme are less dense areas, and under the 350,000 scheme under the more dense areas. So we can take you through those as well. Okay, I'm mindful of time, so we will cover some questions, and much apologies if we don't get to cover your questions. I will attempt to group the questions together, and as a team we will answer your questions. If we don't get to cover your questions, you are probably in touch with one of our colleagues already. Do send us your questions again, and we will definitely send you a follow-up email after this, and with the link to this presentation, and also we'll be able to address your questions over there as well. And of course, don't forget to contact one of us and arrange a free consultation with AFCO Legal. We really think these consultations are very precious and very useful, and they tend to address your individual questions, such as ages of your children, and also the types of investments that you are looking into as well. So the first question we have, Antonio, which is quite a repetitive question today, is actually on the citizenship. So how sure are we that after the 5 years, and assuming one passes the Portugal test, which is actually a very simple Portuguese test, guys, and Portuguese is actually not so far away. There are something like 200 similar words to Bahasa Malaysia. So things like meja, almari, sepatu, gereja are common words. So so how sure are we if the investment and these boxes are ticked, Antonio, that the applicant will get citizenship?
Well, the officials that take care of processing citizenship applications have been very clear since the very beginning, meaning that these files are treated as any other ones. So as long as the same conditions, the same requirements are met, then golden visa holders are eligible for citizenship. Okay, so I think that is the best indication that we can give, and the best reassurance that we can give, is that the registry that takes care of these files has said time and again, as long as all the elements are there, as long as all the requirements are met and all documents are valid, then these will be processed just like any other applicant.
Great. Desmond, the next question is for you, and we have a few clients here who are not from Malaysia, and we have a few clients here who are Malaysians and living outside of Malaysia. And can we process for these clients?
The answer is yes. So we basically, have been handling clients whether they are based here in Malaysia or overseas. In fact, we have we have clients from 18 different countries that we have handled so far. The process could be very, very straightforward. Most of the work can be done, over the Zoom, over the email, communication over the WhatsApp, on the phone. Yes, the answer is yes.
Yeah, that's great. We have actually close relationships with many notaries and also the embassies in around the region. So yeah, we've been able to actually have make many friends and clients from different parts of the world, which has been really nice actually. Okay, Jamie, the next question is for you. We have quite a lot of questions on healthcare and local healthcare in the area, and also the need for private insurance.
Currently, if you're a golden visa holder, as I mentioned earlier on in my presentation, you are entitled to basically access the local healthcare. Now, how it works is very similar to Malaysia. Basically, it's not completely free because, you know, when you walk into UH, you still have to pay 10 or 20 ringgit for registration. So that's something that you still need to do. And what happens is when you're a golden visa holder, you can apply for this called numero utente. So basically, this is the number that will allow you to basically access the healthcare. And as I mentioned to you, there's no differentiation between a temporary resident or a work permit holder or a citizen or a PR. Basically, that's the beauty of Portugal. They treat everyone the same. You will be entitled to basically to access the healthcare. The only thing is if you do intend to live in Portugal, it is necessary for you to apply basically for health insurance. And that actually can cost anything from a few €100, depending on what kind of package you want to per year. And it's actually very reasonable. And most of the time, we actually just aim for the lowest healthcare. That's actually if one were to move there and to live there, that's just a requirement, because sometimes you may want to opt for a private healthcare instead. And even with that, with the insurance, the private healthcare is also reduced because you're a golden visa holder. So it is, I would say that's a really delightful part of the program, which I really like.
Thank you. Antonio, we have a couple of questions regarding reunification of children who are over 18.
Yes, this is possible. There are no limits in terms of age of adult children. Now, we must prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that the children that have already reached 18 are financially dependent. How is this proved? Number one, very simple. Do we have a document that supports that they are enrolled in a learning institution, college, university, etc.? Number two, we also need to show that they are still single, meaning they do not have a family of their own. So with these two documents in place, we can process the applications for children above 18.
Okay. Desmond, we have a few questions regarding the differences between permanent residency and citizenship.
Sure. Yeah, well, as you know, and we mentioned that earlier, the process basically starts from a GV resident status for 5 years, and then you can consider to take on the PR, permanent residence, or citizenship. Now, the difference between these two, obviously, the PR will still limit you and your family member to live, work, and study within Portugal, number one. Number two, being a citizen, if you consider to take up the citizenship, then it opens up the gateway, to the rest of the 27 countries, all right? The beauty about this PR is it is a permanent PR, so it's a lifetime indefinite PR. But what does it comes with is a 5 years permanent residence permit, and it is subjected to a renewal, subjected to a renewable process every 5 years. And there are two conditions that is important over here. Number one, the government should be looking at whether or not you have been absent consecutively over a period of 24 months. Yeah, you must make sure that you don't stay away for 24 months consecutively. Make sure that you spend at least 1 day. Number two, do you have a usual residence? So this usual residence doesn't mean that you are residing there, but a form of an address, whether it is a lease agreement or the property that you have previously invested and still maintain. So by showing the sales and purchase agreement, having a presence in Portugal, are the requirements for the PR renewable. But of course, if you were to consider take up the citizenship, then it doesn't matter anymore by having a passport, whether you're spending your time there or not, or you move to some other country like Switzerland, you move to France, or you move to Ireland. So you do have all this flexibility.
That's great. So Jamie, the next question is for you, because you're kind of a real life example of whether one can travel to Portugal at the moment and what are the quarantine requirements.
At this point in time, I would say, unfortunately, Malaysians are actually not allowed to actually enter Portugal yet for non-essential travel. However, if you have actually applied for the golden visa and we actually have a letter, basically, normally we'll have a letter from the immigration that will stipulate that we'll need to be present for our biometrics, then it will be considered an essential travel, and then we will be able to go into Portugal. But for the time being, unfortunately, what most of the Malaysians are doing, they are actually going through other options. So as you know, Malaysia recently opened up the option for us to go to UK. So you may be able to go to UK first, or even like Spain first, because they do allow non-essential travel. And then thereafter, through as I mentioned to you, that's to avoid the quarantine period. And then in order to get into Portugal, that's where the letter for the essential travel will take place.
Okay, the next question is for me, and those are property related questions. One is, how do we invest in a property if we can't travel there? I get asked this a lot, and out of our some 80 clients, I believe that only perhaps 3 or 4 clients have actually traveled to Portugal. Google Maps is great, and also there's actually a lot of research out there, and a lot of research that we have done for you. And we will be taking you through the general investment outlook, the location, and also then the types of returns. So for example, if you want to choose something with a long-term rental, commercial in the areas where, say, it's near the central bank, or it's near areas where there's a lot of employment, would make sense. Similarly with residential, particularly in the long-term leases, those areas also make sense. And in areas where you'd like Airbnb returns, which tend to be a bit higher and also have a lower tax rate than areas where it is near touristic locations, also make sense. And there are hybrids of all these in between. So we can take you through. Sometimes I think that in my experience of selling property around the world, we've done property in Australia, in Thailand, in Europe, in London. Google Maps and also general research of each individual area probably makes better sense than one being there, because then you get a bird's eye view and a good analytics of your investment, in general. So I actually think that these, in today's environment, we don't have to be there, and actually using the tools and the technology, which is now so easy to use, and you can actually take a walk and, around the area, is probably better. So that is one of the questions. In terms of ROI and return on investment, if you look at a long-term investment, in most of the developed countries, expect about 4 to 5% of a long-term investment, and of course then the tax is in Portugal at 28%, which is generally low for a developed nation and for Europe. And in terms of then, we also have investment options with return on investments using Airbnb again, and those tend to be higher and with a lower tax rate. And those are some of the things we can take you through as well. Funds, if you invest in a fund, the returns are not subject to tax, and so that is also some of the positive things about investing into funds. So do contact us, and according to what you may be keen on, I must say that there is no sort of one type of investment fits everyone, and we will go through with you depending on what you are more experienced in, just in your own investment portfolios, to recommend you or to show you different types of investments. And we have done due diligence on most of the investments that we recommend, and we will ensure that these are qualified for the golden visa under the schemes that you choose, and we do have 100% success rate in those. So okay, the next question we have is on actually Airbnb restriction zones. Are there any Airbnb restriction zones? We actually get this quite a lot because I think when we research on the internet, there are areas where there are hybrids of investments and whether, some of the areas are restricted for Airbnb. And Jamie, would you like to answer this, having some investor in Portugal?
Sorry, can you repeat the question again? Sorry.
Airbnb restriction zones.
Oh, okay. So in Lisbon, I would say right now there are areas basically that fall under the absolute restriction zone, and then there's a relative restriction zone. So in an absolute restriction zone, unfortunately, the quota has been met basically for applications of the for the purpose of short-term rental. So they are no longer issuing any new Airbnb licenses basically for the owners. So because of this, we would recommend for clients who are interested in investing and looking for Airbnb available areas to consult with us so that we can show them exactly where they can invest, which is out of the absolute and the relative containment zone.
So Antonio, the next two questions are for you. One is regarding tax. So worldwide tax, is there worldwide tax? And also tax liability on, I'm sort of gathering the questions together on the returns, on the rental returns, and also capital gains tax.
Very good. Well, generally, unless you become a Portuguese tax resident, you will not be paying worldwide tax in Portugal. How do you become a Portuguese tax resident? By spending more than half the year in Portugal, or if you happen to own a property which is your main place of residence. Okay, if you just invest in a property and lease it, that would never be your main place of residence. So essentially, most of our clients are non-tax residents in Portugal because they do not fulfill either requirement. This means that for those that do have an investment, let's like say real estate, they will file a tax return, but only for their Portuguese income. In terms of capital gains, the rate for non-residents is currently 28%. You must bear in mind that, however, the taxable base can be very, very reduced because you take your selling price minus your purchase price. Purchase price, depending on the year you bought, will be affected by a coefficient. So that purchase price will actually rise a little bit, lowering the tax base. And you can also use the following expenses to deduct them from your tax base as well. And this includes any stamp duty, transfer tax that you've paid, any commissions paid to real estate agents, notary fees, and also major improvements on your property over the last 12 years. So all of this can be used to deduct and again, lower your capital gains tax base.
Okay, and the next question is, can we get a loan to purchase property for purposes of the Golden Visa?
You can get a loan in Portugal, but only above your minimum investment threshold. Say you're buying a property of 500,000, or you're going to qualify or intend to apply for your Golden Visa for a qualifying investment of 500,000 euro, then that loan can only be above 500,000. This being a residency by investment program, that minimum amount needs to come from abroad. Same thing for the 350,000 scheme. Only above 350,000 could you request a loan in Portugal. Of course, you can also do so abroad. That's fine. Money comes from abroad, no questions asked. So there's a difference if you apply for that loan in your home country or in Portugal.
The next question I will answer, can we invest in different investment or different properties, farmland, commercial property, shop outlets? Yes, you can. Most of these, in this case, when you invest in sort of a basket, will fall under the 500,000 scheme. And we've actually sold car parks, adding on to a property, 2 properties. And yes, you can choose different investments adding up to 500,000. We also have farmland. If you like, those investments generally are higher, and they are investments that are above 1 million, and you can look into investing in those as well. So yes, you can invest in a basket of properties totaling up to more than 500,000. Antonio, the next question is, does Portugal allow dual citizenship?
Yes. Full dual citizenship is allowed.
Okay, I am mindful of time, and we are around reaching 1 hour and 25 minutes. And we usually try and limit the presentation to 1 hour and 15 minutes. So we will be contacting you, and don't hesitate to contact any one of us on these contact details here. If we haven't covered your questions, we apologize. We will be able to cover with you with the questions with you one-on-one, particularly because a lot of your questions are also consultative. And yes, we do handle clients from all across the globe, even in Angola, where Antonio has a lot of clients there, and different countries as well. So do contact us. We are available for the next Zoom and the next call. If you're on WhatsApp, you can also WhatsApp us, and many of us are on Viber as well, and other communication methods. We chat as well. So thank you so much. Thank you so much today for all our panelists for this very, very informative webinar. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Do keep in touch, and we will be sending you as well. Do contact us, text us directly to one of our colleagues that have already contacted you. So we'll send you also a recording of this webinar to recap. Thank you again. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Have a good weekend.
Good afternoon.
Nice weekend. Ciao.